As the entry point to Citroen's sprawling range of MPVs, the Nemo Multispace plays an important role. Its van origins are ultimately a help rather than a hindrance, giving the vehicle its sturdy build, functional design and 5-seat interior space that's huge when you consider its tiny dimensions. Citroen has installed itself as the undisputed king of the MPV. You may not agree that the French makers' products are the best, but you can't argue with the fact that they offer more choice in this sector than anyone else. With a full range of conventional passenger car-based people carriers, and also a selection of people carriers based on models from Citroen's small van range, the French brand offers more options for moving people around than National Express. From the outside, such a varied range of vehicles designed to fill essentially similar roles can seem like overkill. Citroen would counter by saying that their MPV collection is carefully structured to meet the varying needs of modern families, which makes this car, their Nemo Multispace, the car for a family that needs a small vehicle with a lot of space and doesn't have a lot of cash to spend on it. Now, it's based on the underpinnings of their Nemo van and is essentially the same vehicle as the Fiat Cubo. But since all those vehicles are based on super mini underpinnings, that isn't necessarily too much of a problem. So let's stop trying to label this model and instead see it for what it is. A very compact 4 to 5 seater family car that's super mini sized, so smaller than you'd expect an MPV to be. Now that means it's tiny and nimble enough to twirl around the tightest underground supermarket car park, yet big enough to use on the average family holiday. A pretty tough brief to fulfill if you think about it. Citroen also offer their Berlinga Multispace and C4 Grand Picasso compact MPVs for families to consider, but if you don't need the 7-seat options they provide, then you might well be better off with this one. Now, there's an upright driving position in the Nemo and good forward visibility. Visibility towards the rear is slightly compromised by the rear side windows that taper upwards and the thick rear C-pillars, but the wide back screen helps when parking, as does the tight turning circle. Now, you can get pretty comfortable here. If I stop, I'll just show you. The wheel adjusts in and out as well as up and down. Plus, you've got height adjustment for the driver's seat. And the dash-mounted gear lever is close at hand, so it's easy to manipulate. On the move, the steering's quite light, which is ideal for stop-start urban motoring. On the move on faster routes, you wouldn't obviously mark this down as a van in disguise. Sure, the unyielding van suspension has been tweaked a bit for passenger use, but not enough to exacerbate the kind of body roll that all high-ish sided vehicles suffer from to some extent. This one compensates with mild, relaxing road manners, reasonable levels of grip and decent refinement. Overall, your experience on the open road will probably depend a great deal on your choice of engine. We'd counsel you to avoid the entry-level 75 brake horsepower 1.4 litre petrol unit, which makes you pay for its upfront £1,000 price saving with rather feeble acceleration. It takes over 16 seconds to reach 60 from rest. Now, at first glance, the spec sheet suggests that the alternative 70 brake horsepower 1.4 litre HDI diesel unit is even slower. But with 160 Newton meters of torque, that's over 50% more pulling power, it's a far more compatible companion in day-to-day motoring. In this form, this vehicle is, quite simply, as fast as it needs to be. If you thought a van-based people carrier would be a utilitarian thing in both look and feel, then this Nemo Multispace should exceed your expectations. The chunky exterior styling has more than a hint of 4x4 about it, with these protruding bumpers and the flared wheel arches. And those bumpers and the side rubbing strips are also very useful in protecting against the kind of parking scrapes that vans and MPVs have a habit of picking up. The rear light clusters, like those at the front, are mounted high up out of harm's way, and this Nemo Multispace also benefits from its van counterpart's convenient access points. At under 4 metres long from nose to tail, this Nemo is no bigger than a Fiesta Super Mini, so it certainly doesn't have room for the kind of third row seating that you'll find on the French maker's larger Berlingo Multispace. Still, there's plenty of room in here given the confines of those small dimensions, with more headroom than you could possibly find a use for, and plenty of legroom for 4 adult passengers. There are also a reasonable number of internal storage areas, including a large glove box, and the hose clean flooring is a useful thing on a vehicle of this type. The large tailgate isn't the easiest thing to lift, but once you get it raised, it forms a useful rain canopy and it reveals a 360 litre storage area. That's slightly bigger than you get in the Fiat Cubo, and that's just below the rear parcel shelf. Now, stack your goods to the ceiling and of course there's loads more space available, but this car really reveals its commercial vehicle origins when you fold the rear seats to achieve up to 740 litres of carrying capacity. Now you can actually take those seats out if you want to really return the vehicle to its commercial origins and free up to 2,500 litres of space. But in most cases, those rear seats will be occupied by back row passengers. Now, those passengers will access the vehicle via these sliding side doors, which are pretty useful to stop your offspring resculpting the bodywork of adjacent cars when they exit. List prices suggest that you'll probably end up paying between £10,000 and £12,000 for your Nemo Multispace, with a premium of around £1,000 if you go for the 1.4 litre HDI diesel over the 1.4 litre petrol model. Compared with Fiat's near identical Cubo, that sees the petrol Nemo command a £200 premium, but you'll pay about the same for the diesel models before you start talking discounts. Now, that's about the same as you'd pay for a conventional and, by contrast, pretty impractical Super Mini. If you go for the diesel, there's the option of a 6-speed sensor drive semi-automatic gearbox. Rivals for this car, apart from its Fiat Cubo design stablemate, can mainly be found amongst the ranks of more car-like but less practical Super Mini MPVs. Models like Citroen's own C3 Picasso. These are cars that would probably cost you a few £100s more model for model. Now, don't be tempted to compare this Nemo with larger compact van-based people carriers like, say, Citroen's Berlingo Multispace or Peugeot's partner Tipi. These are family hatchback-based models and will cost you around £1,500 more model for model, but they are bigger, and they do offer a 7-seat carrying option that this Nemo is too small to be able to provide. Running costs are low with Group 2 insurance and combined fuel consumption of 63 miles to the gallon on this diesel version, and CO2 emissions of 119 grams per kilometre. Those are returns that respectively fall to 42.2 miles to the gallon and 157 grams per kilometre of CO2 if you opt for the petrol model, and that does slightly better than the rival petrol Fiat Cubo. Residual values see this car realising about 42% of its original purchase price after 3 years and 30,000 miles. The qualities that manufacturers routinely build into their commercial vehicles translate very well to the bottom end of the MPV market. Now, Citroen understands this better than most, and although this Nemo Multispace is the smallest such vehicle that the marque has so far brought us, it's also arguably the most space efficient. Compared to its Fiat Cubo design stablemate, it may not look quite as trendy, but it does offer slightly more luggage space below the parcel shelf with the seats in place, and it is slightly more fuel efficient in petrol guise. Overall, as long as you're not expecting too much in terms of creature comforts, it's hard not to like this French contender. It's a no-frills way of meeting the family's transport needs, so its rather utilitarian feel and lack of power can easily be forgiven. Neat handling and a tough, adaptable cabin certainly make it a great tool for ferrying the kids around. And those funky 4x4 style looks mean that if you don't tell anyone it's a van, they'll probably never know.